Yeah, man. We gotta get through this episode like they got through this firefight. All right. We gotta
Exactly.
Band
Yes.
of
Boys,
Brothers.
those boys are
Band of Brothers.
fighting for our freedom, so we could do a cheesy podcast like this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If
And
they
so
could
our
do
users
that,
have the right to turn us off at 54 seconds.
yeah. If they could. Woo. Oh, let's hope not. Let's
All
hope.
right. Here we go, fellas. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Nightcap. What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Hey,
Hey,
welcome back.
what's
Welcome
going
back,
on?
guys.
Another good night.
To all our
Mhm.
men and women in the armed forces, cheers.
Here,
Cheers.
thank you for your service. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you.
Amen to that.
And with that being said, well, obviously, what movie are we doing today, Steve?
We're doing The Outpost. A modern American classic. Hopefully.
Mhm.
Hopefully. But
It is.
before we hop into the premise on this movie, what's everyone drinking tonight? I mean, we are the Nightcap, even though I'm kind of bad at this sometimes.
You're drinking orange juice last time. I am drinking whiskey.
I'm
Nice.
I'm drinking Truly because it was on sale at Costco, 30 for $30. I couldn't say no to that.
Watch that figure. And I'm drinking a little, to stay on brand, I'm drinking a little Kirkland margarita. So there you go.
Only the finest. Only the finest for you.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah,
let's
we're not
hop into our
sponsored by
movie.
Kirkland.
Yeah, man.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Hint, hint.
Well, let's hop into our movie. Let me read the breakdown here, and then we'll get into the plot points here. All right, The Outpost is a 2020 American war drama film directed by Rod Laurie, based off the 2012 nonfiction book The Outpost, An Untold Story of American Valor by Jake Tapper. And yes, it's that Jake Tapper. About the Battle of Kamdesh. It stars Orlando Bloom, Scott Eastwood, Caleb Landry Jones, Milo Gibson, and Jack Kesey. Let's see here. The story is based about the bravery of a small unit of U.S. soldiers alone in the remote combat outpost Keating. The Battle of Kamdesh, as it was known, was the bloodiest American engagement of the Afghan War in 2009. Bravo Troop 361 CAV became known as the most one of the most decorated units of the 19-year conflict. It was located deep in the Valley of Three Mountains in Afghanistan. Battles to defend against an overwhelming force of Taliban fighters in a coordinated attack. So yeah, that's pretty much it, fellas. I mean, in terms of the plot itself, it's based off a true story, so there's not a lot of artistic leeway here. It's pretty straightforward. Overall, I think I ended up giving it actually a 4 out of 10. Just because right from the beginning, it kind of foreshadows what it's going to be, right? They're calling it Camp Custer. You kind of can see that this isn't going to end well. They point out the very unstrategic location of this outpost in the middle of this canyon, surrounded on all sides, and you just know that this isn't going to end well. But what other plot points did you guys have? I'll take it away.
There wasn't really too much of a plot. Like, it's based on a true story. The plot is pretty much to survive this death trap. This camp death trap is what I'm going to call it.
Yep.
It's because like even the tagline right from the very beginning of the movie, like you touched on it, Camp Custer, and the guy was like, is because pretty much everyone's going to die. So you're like, well, okay, well there you go. And yeah, so pretty much the plot, I still gave it a 7 just because I was still entertained by it. But really, there was no plot. There was really no story. They didn't try to Hollywood it. It was them pretty much just trying to survive this whole ordeal. That's the entire plot.
Yeah. But like you guys said, I mean, it's hard, like you said, Steve, when you touched upon it. How do you make a plot based around a true story? And like Al said, you don't want to make it too Hollywoodized, too dramatic. I mean, you pretty much summed it up in the plot description. That was the whole movie. It was just first of all, whoever thought of putting a base in a canyon bowl? What the fuck? What is that a good idea? Like, man, that was the plot. Like, here's a base, stupid location, survive.
Yeah, I agree.
Pretty much.
It all feels like it's inevitable, right? This is going to turn out, unfortunately. And you meet these characters from the very beginning, and you can even hear their cynical approach to where they're located, and they're all looking to get out, and they're talking about closing the outpost, but it's like you're watching a modern version of the Alamo. Going in, this isn't going to end well. And so there's just not a lot of complexity there. But that doesn't take anything away from the story itself. I mean, it's based on a true
No.
story, and right away, you know, it's just building on that tension that, you know, how's this going to end, and they introduce you to these characters, you know, these different captains, and like so, you know, in sequence here, and you're kind of like torn of like getting invested in these characters, and then you also see their kind of quick demise. But I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent yet before we get into the actual deeper into the story. Let's talk about the overall production. Overall, I thought it looked very crisp. The camera work, well, I thought was excellent. The cinematographer, a lot of handheld shots, a lot of long sequences here. And I just thought overall, I thought it looked really great. Did you guys have anything else that stood out to you guys in terms of the overall production of the film?
Overall production, I really gave it a really good score. I gave it almost a perfect score, 19 out of 20. One, and you touched on it, was to me was just the single action shots were just great. It looked authentic. Granted, I was never in the army, but it looked authentic. They weren't like, you know, dressed in like Vietnam like uniforms or anything like that. Like, so it looked like it was like, you know, legit. And the just the sound
No one
effects.
had a musket. Right?
No one had a musket. It wasn't the Patriot. And I really wish I saw this in the theater, because I'm sure the sound effects and like the audio was just so, it made you immersed in this movie.
Yeah.
So I wish that I really was in a big theater with like the big surround system, just to really like get the full scope of it, because I'm pretty sure they meant for this to be seen in the big screen, like IMAX if possible.
Well, production I thought was on point from start to finish. I gave it a perfect score because I mean, the way he shot it, like that opening scene when they land and you look up in the bowl and all you see is mountain, that really brought it
very
in
daunting.
there. And then the rest of the time when it's following each character in different shots, those live action shots, and even just a certain way, I thought it was done really well. I mean, it was a really good movie where I didn't feel brought out of the movie at any point. It was just, it was entertaining. It was, like you said, it was just a great, I don't know, I gave it a perfect score. It was good. I thought everything.
Hide behind that drink, Rich.
There you go. Rich is taking cover behind that whiskey right now.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't know what to say anymore.
I didn't give it a perfect score. I gave it a 17 out of 20. I will say the music, I thought it felt a little uninspired. It felt serviceable, but that was about it. But yeah, overall, I thought it looked great. Let's get into the acting. Overall, this is a big cast. There's a lot of characters here, but you know, Landry Jones's character, Caleb Landry Jones's character, really stands out. You really get to see his arc in character development, and then Scott Eastwood's character too. He did, I thought, a really excellent job. Orlando Bloom's in this movie, you know, kind of briefly, if you will,
very brief,
in a very much different kind of role than I'm used to seeing him in. He's almost like an elder statesman here, right? He's the commanding officer and leading these guys. And I thought that was kind of interesting. He had a very interesting accent as well, which maybe you could touch upon that.
Very ambiguous accent. I didn't know where that accent came from. I don't know if that's just Orlando Bloom's American accent. I don't know if that's what he was trying to do, but it kind of took me away. But he still did a good job, even though he got taken out by a truck like very early in the movie. Spoiler alert. But the acting itself, well, I still gave it a 24 out of 30, and that's for Scott Eastwood, and also because of Caleb Jones. Right. Caleb Jones, especially in the second half of this movie, was just, he ate up like the screen. Like every little shot he was in, you were like, man, this guy's killing it right now. And it really showed his emotion. It was this movie was like a tale of two halves, because the first half, the acting was okay. They were acting like bros. You know what I'm saying? Like they were in the army. They were like doing mundane stuff, and then occasionally getting shot at. Then you only saw like their acting chops the second half of the movie, when the actual firefight started. That's when they started showing their emotion, their like more of their range. And I thought the acting was great, anchored by Eastwood and Jones.
Yeah, I thought those two killed the movie. I mean, I'm really starting to become an Eastwood fan. I've seen him in a couple movies now, and he does a really good job as an actor. The overall acting, it's hard to say. It was great. It was good. I gave it a 21. But the reason why I'm saying that is the cast was so big. Everybody had little parts, with the exception of Eastwood and I'm sorry, I already forgot his name. Good job, though.
Caleb Jones.
With the exception of them, they were quick little scenes. They didn't have too big of roles, nothing too big. but that's how they kind of pulled it together for me as an actor, as acting, because they made it seem like they were a conclusive group. Like they meshed well. It was like their own environment, and they pulled it off as actors like they were a unit, and I thought that was good. So
Yeah, man. Band of brothers.
Yeah. I will say
mhm.
like a little bit, I mean, and I know it's kind of it was done on purpose. Some of the dialogue in the beginning, between the guys and soldiers, is a little cringy, and they're supposed to be these guys riffing and just acting,
Hmm.
ridiculous on the bass. But I like what you said, Al. It's like almost like a tale of two. It's almost like two stories, right? The first half, and then once the final like sequence starts of action here, when they're finally under attack, you really get to see the character of these guys and how they shine in this, in this most stressful moments. But yeah, I thought it did really well. I mean, that's my highest score was the acting on this one, and led, like you said, by Eastwood and Jones. And Jones is particularly right. You get to see his arc, kind of going from this
Hmm.
like ostracized outcast to stepping up in the big moments, and then at the end, you see him really affected, right? Kind of suffering from PTSD from what just happened and what he experienced. And he ends up winning like the Medal of Honor. So it was cool. I really appreciated that. Um, Getting into the directing, speaking of Jones as well, one of my favorite little shots was towards the end when he wakes up, the night after the battle, and he's surrounded by all the body bags,
Yeah.
and it
Oh
just kind of
yeah,
leaves an impact on you, right? Of like, wow, just kind of reminding you of the loss that we just happened, because there was so much
exactly.
action in that period of time there, and you just kind of all these bodies are dropping left and right, and then you kind of reel back and then you take it all in. Okay, who actually did we lose, right? And 7 people were lost that day. I do wish there was a little bit more of that type of, I don't know what you would call that. Maybe just, artistic type of shots like that were really played on it. Something maybe a little bit more Apocalypse Now, where the
Mm.
director took his time a little bit more to kind of draw out those types of like shots, which I know
Mhm.
are obviously a little choreographed and planned, but it's still a minor quip. I think overall he did a good job, and really this movie is about the action in that battle sequence, and my attention was held the whole time.
Oh, absolutely. Like the directing guy is the highest score I gave it. I gave it a 27 out of 30 just because this director, he did such a great job immersing you in this movie,
Mhm.
especially in the obviously in the second half of the movie with the firefight. You felt like you were in the firefight, and it
Yeah.
was like, holy crap! Like the single action shots, like just the way it was shot, just the action sequences, like it was gritty, and you felt like you were in there. That's why I said, like, to touch back on like what I said before. I wish I saw it in the big screen instead of just like renting it from home, And and I was like, yeah, just all it just immersed you. That's just my word for this whole movie. It was just it was an immersion
It's a
into
it's a good
this
word,
movie.
I mean,
It
especially
is.
based off the setting where they're literally
Yeah, like
immersed.
you were immersed in this canyon with these guys. Like, holy crap! Like, yeah, he did a great job. I should look up this what other movies this guy directed because he damn good job.
He did good. I thought the directing was solid, honestly. Like you said, it was very immersive, but he did a good job of portraying that like these guys are just in a bad situation from the get go.
Yeah.
Like, and he gets that message across at the same time, trying to build the buddyship up. That's where I think it fell a little short because it's trying to get you to. He tried to get you to know almost every character that was trying to be attached to who was going to die. Don't get me wrong; it's not a bad thing. It's something that commonly happens in movies. But there was just so many of them. That was my biggest gripe about the
Hmm.
directing. Felt a little squished, a little too much in there um, for me. But I thought he did a great job, honestly. I gave it 25, like I said, not horrible. That's my little quip about it. But he portrayed the bad vibe, tension, a little slow on the tension buildup. But when it finally got there, it was like, holy shit. It was
Yeah,
Yeah.
intense.
I
like he
agree.
he did a good job in like the first half, kind of lulling you, like kind of
Hmm.
not into
Hmm.
sleep, but
Like a
into a
calm
false
before the
sense of
storm.
yeah, like you're like kind of like, what the heck's gonna happen? But you always felt like that storm was coming. With
Right.
like the guy always kind of crying wolf, Taliban's coming,
Yeah,
Taliban's coming,
exactly.
Taliban's
Yeah,
coming.
exactly.
And then finally, and then even Eastwood's character when they were like walking in the mountains, like that scene, I really like that scene. He's like, well, how would you do it? He's like, well,
Yeah.
they're testing us. They're testing us so they know what's gonna happen when the big one comes, and the big one's coming. And right there, you're like, oh man. And
Good
then
foreshadowing. Good
and then
foreshadowing.
like
Yeah.
literally like in the like halfway through the movie, boom, like the big battle happens, and you're like, I was like literally on the edge of my seat, like the second half of the movie. So, like I said, man, props to this director. Like he did a damn good job.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good balance. And like I said, I mean, there's not too much leeway there because he's got to stay true to the story. So, but he did a good job of delivering it, like you said, and kind of portraying both ends of it, of kind of, like I said, the everyday like life where the random attacks become a way of life to the very end where you kind of get this climax in the action where it's just all mayhem, right? And you got guys running in the base and they're being shot from all directions. So it was good. I really liked it. And even the end, you get the resolution too, where you get to see the guys after the battle and how they're each one's kind of dealing with it, what just happened in their own way. So that was cool too. But let's hop into the X Factors. For me overall, it wasn't a huge X Factor. Nothing to take away against the movie, but to me, really what I have in my notes is it's such a tragedy. You know what I mean? Now these guys are nothing to take away from these soldiers. They're doing their duty, being there in this shitty situation. But it's, so much of it seems kind of like you just wonder, like, what was this for? You know what I mean? They're putting this outpost. They say from the beginning it's a crappy, situation of being strategically. It's awful, and so to me it's a sad story. Even at the end, these young men lost their lives, and you're kind of like, well, what gained, other than their service to each other as they're, like you said, these band of brothers. So I only ended up giving it a 4 out of 10 because I don't know how much often I'd want to go back and revisit this, just because I said it's kind of like a sadder story, but I definitely appreciated the story, and it was nothing that I was aware of, like in the news or anything. So I thought that in itself was cool.
Right. For me, I gave the X Factor 10 out of 10 just because, one, I support the troops, all right? And then two, I like that they didn't try to really shine this up. Like, they didn't really try to put any politics into it. They just shows just the courage of our troops, of what they're doing to, keep us free, like I said, like you mentioned, like to keep us doing like these stupid little podcasts, to keep us, give us freedom. And so and then the scene at the end where they showed all the pictures of like the real people who died, it kind of hits home just because, and they showed their ages. These were kids.
Yeah, I know.
These were kids fighting. Yeah, these are kids fighting for us. So just to see that, it just kind of smacks you in the face, and you're like, man, that's what hit me. That's why 10 out of 10 for like the X Factor for me, because God bless you guys. God bless you guys. Seriously.
Yep, I'll drink to that.
God bless you guys.
I gave it a 7, just for the immersion factor. I was a little apprehensive even when trying to going into this movie and watching it. It wasn't really one that I kind of really wanted to watch. But when I actually turned it on and I got immersed in it, for me, that's a great movie. Like, if I could get immersed in a movie and just time kind of flies and I'm not time clock watching or getting distracted, that's what the X Factor for me is. I like that when movies do that to me. When I'm just like, hell yeah, I'm along for the ride. I'm gonna watch this. So I give it a 7.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good movie. But once it really picks up in the second half, it can really just kind of grabs you, like Al said, and just kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat. So overall, score wise, what did you guys end up giving it? Al, what did you end up giving it?
I actually gave a really solid 87 out of 100.
Nice. How about you, Rich?
I gave it a 79.
I ended up giving it 73. And I think the score is a little bit lower than maybe I felt about the movie. And that's not a knock against it. It's just that, it's retelling a story. Like we said from the beginning, that, the plot's fairly simple. There's not a lot of twists and turns here. And even, like I said, the resolution at the end for me, it wasn't something that necessarily I want to go back and watch over and over again to kind of take away from it. But that takes nothing away from the story itself. I thought it was still a very enjoyable movie. I really enjoyed it, and even the action sequences, especially the way they were shot, looked very crisp. Like I said, I wish the director took a little bit more license here and kind of maybe dramatized it a little bit more, just for that cinematic effect. Personally,
I like that he did it.
Other than that, I thought it was just a very solid film. So I can't complain. No complaints here. Any lasting points before we call it a wrap, guys?
No, the plot was the weakest point for me, and that's what brought me in the 70s. I was just kind of surprised myself that it wasn't in the 80s, because I really enjoyed this movie, but it was just the simplicity of the plot was what kind of brought it down for me.
And then for me,
nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing wrong with it at all, because It's based on a true story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm the only patriot of the group because I gave it an 87. And so one, let me get that out of the way. And I'll disagree with Steve. I like that they didn't like, polish this up. Like there was no big like inspirational speech, like, going to battle. Like pretty much the speech was Eastwood saying, "We're taking this bitch back." That's it. Like that was his
I
inspirational speech.
appreciate
They're like,
that.
yeah, they're like, all right, let's do it.
All right.
And so that's that. So that's where I disagree with Steve. But all around, man, awesome movie. I would watch it again. I would watch it.
Me too. I'm glad I watched this one. It was a good movie.
Right on, guys. All right. Well, I think from the nightcap, that pretty much says it. So to the Outpost, to our men and women in service,
Yeah.
cheers wherever you guys are. We appreciate
Thank you guys for your service. Seriously.
Thank you.
And we'll call it a wrap. Good night, everybody.
See you guys next time.
Good night.